You're very welcome to this training course on manual handling. So this module forms the foundation of safe manual handling techniques. So manual handling, whether we like it or not, is part of our everyday lives, whether it's in offices, warehouses, construction, or even in the home environment. But if it's done incorrectly, it can lead to serious injuries, especially to the areas like the back, shoulders, and limbs. So through this training, you're going to learn how to assess risks and use proper techniques and understand your body's limits. So the benefits of manual handling training, they go beyond just preventing injury. It promotes better posture, improves productivity, reduces absenteeism, and it helps create a culture of safety within the workplace as well. So I'm here to provide you with the information. But at the end of the day, to be honest, it's down to you to apply it to help reduce injury occurring. By the end of this module, you'll have the tools and awareness to perform manual handling tasks safely and confidently. Let's begin by looking at what we're going to cover in this manual handling course here today. So firstly, the law. So we look at the 2007 General Application Regulations, Chapter 4, Part 2, and that deals with the area of manual handling. We'll go over the spine's anatomy and how injuries like slipped, herniated, or prolapsed disc can occur, all of which mean pain and suffering, which is what we're trying to avoid by adapting good manual handling techniques. We'll talk about fitness for the task, why flexibility in muscles and ligaments matter. We'll look at hazardous loads, the likes of awkward or unstable items, and environmental risks like hot, cold, uneven surfaces or poor lighting. We'll explore ways to reduce injuries, such as lessening the load or distance, using proper techniques and mechanical aids. We'll also learn safe manual handling techniques with a practical demonstration towards the end of the course. We'll introduce the TILE approach, which stands for Task, Individual, Load and Environment, and that just helps us to carry out a basic risk assessment. And finally, we'll cover the area of personal protective equipment. Because injuries can affect more than just the back, we need to wear the right equipment for the particular task that we're doing. By the end of this course, you're going to have a clear understanding of safe manual handling so as to reduce the chance of getting injured. So we're going to look at the risks and hazards associated with manual handling and understand the impact that poor manual handling can cause. I've been delivering this course for a good few years now, and there hasn't been one course where someone hasn't been affected by some sort of manual handling injury. It could be a hernia, sciatica, slip disc, etc. But they all have a massive impact on the person injured. And don't forget as well, the people around them have to take care of them. So my main aim here is to provide you with information so that you make the right choices. There's no point looking back saying, I wish I'd done this, that or the other. The time really to think about it is before you do the task at all, not afterwards when you have the injury. So we'll also touch off legal requirements, and that's covered under the Health and Safety General Application Regulations 2007, Chapter 2, Part 2, and that deals with manual handling. So the legislation is just there really to keep you safe. And there's plenty of information on the Health and Safety Authority website, such as manual handling of loads, which breaks down the regulations into simple guidance so that we can all understand it. We're also going to cover how to assess risk, and that's done by using the acronym TILE. So it's just a simple way to do it. So T is for task. What exactly does the job entail? I for the individual. Are they physically able to carry out the job? The L is for the load. Is it awkward, unwieldy? Is it difficult to grasp? The E is for the environment, which, to be honest, is one of the main ones that tends to get forgotten. So the likes of putting lights on, wedging a door open for the duration of the activity. Risk assessment is just a process of identifying the potential hazards, the things that can cause you harm in the workplace or the activity, and then evaluate the risks and decide on the actions to reduce or eliminate those risks, such as using mechanical aids or team lifting, etc. Then we think about the level of risk. So think of the traffic lights. Green is low, amber is medium, and then red is high risk. And then based on this, we put measures in place, which are called control measures, and they just help reduce the risk level. So an example would be in the past, people used to travel with big suitcases and they'd have the arms pulled off them. But nowadays, you don't really see that because most people are using the wheeled option because it makes the task much easier and reduces the level of risk. We'll cover correct manual handling posture, so focusing on body positioning that reduces strain and prevents injury. So today we're going to learn how to do the task safely to reduce the chance of injury. Finally, we'll look at safe handling techniques, including best practices for pushing and pulling, working as a part of a team, and the correct use of mechanical aids to make manual handling safer and more effective. So why do we bother then with manual handling? Like, what's the point of it? Well, the reason we do it is because incorrect manual handling still remains one of the most common causes of injury in the workplace. And it can lead to both visible injuries and those which we don't see, like internal strains and long-term damage. And we'll see some examples on the next slide of that. So in fact, the likes of poor manual handling, it's a major cause of musculoskeletal disorders. And it makes up about 1/3 of all reported workplace injuries. So by understanding the risks and adapting proper techniques, we can reduce the injuries and protect ourselves to make sure we return home safe and sound at the end of the working day, which is what we all want. So statistics there from the Health and Safety Authority, they outline that approximately 1/3 of all workplace accidents are triggered by manual handling activities. It's crazy, isn't it? 1/3. But if we adopt correct principles and if we lift correctly and not take chances, you know, we're going to reduce that risk substantially. At the end of the day, it's down to ourselves. We can go on the training, we can be aware of it, but we need to take it on board and then apply it. When we think about manual handling injuries, it's important to understand they fall into two main groups, and that's um, internal injuries and external injuries. So external injuries, they're the ones that are visible and they usually happen instantly. So the likes of cuts, abrasions, bruises, or even crush injuries. For example, lifting sharp or jagged objects without proper gloves, that can result in cuts. So we need to ensure that we're wearing the correct personal protective equipment for the task we're doing. Dropping a heavy box on your foot, well, that could result in a crush injury. Then we have internal injuries. They're a bit harder to detect, but they're just as serious. So these can include muscle or ligament strain, and that's often caused by lifting loads incorrectly. And that leads to pain, inflammation, and reduced mobility as well. Hernias. That's a condition where the internal tissue it pushes through a weak spot that's in the muscle wall, and it's often resulting from strain during heavy lifting. Hemorrhoids. They can be aggravated by excessive pressure or poor lifting posture. We've got prolapsed discs. So when the cushioning discs between the vertebrae slip out of place, that's potentially causing severe back pain and nerve damage. Then we've got work-related upper limb disorders and repetitive strain injuries, such as tennis elbow, and that's often linked to repetitive movements or awkward postures over time. And finally, fractures, a more acute, immediate risk that can occur due to slips, falls, or dropped loads. But the good news is if we adapt good manual handling techniques, we can reduce the risk of the likes of these injuries occurring. A little bit more now on manual handling injuries. So when it comes to manual handling, it's important to understand how the different stresses can affect the body. So first is the traumatic stress. So this happens immediately, and it's often as a result of sudden unexpected incident like a fall, a heavy lift gone wrong, or a sharp twist. So the effects are usually instant and can cause serious injury and long-term pain. So next we have the cumulative stress. So this builds up over time and it's often as a result of repeated movements or poor posture or incorrect lifting techniques. Even if each action seems minor, over days, months and years, the damage it all adds up. Finally, there's degenerative stress. So as we get older, the discs in our spines will naturally dehydrate and shrink. That's why elderly people tend to get shorter in height as they get older. So the degeneration also makes them less flexible and they're more prone to injury. So it's a good reminder that proper techniques become even more important as we get older. And understanding these stress types, it's key really to prevent an injury and staying safe on the job. We're now on to vulnerable groups. So manual handling, it affects everyone differently. And it's important that we recognize the individual risk factors. They play an important role. So some individuals, like we mentioned, the elderly, they might have reduced flexibility, they might have slower reaction times, or existing wear and tear on joints, and that just makes them more vulnerable to injury. Then on the other hand, then we have got younger workers, and they might feel strong and capable, but they lack experience and take unnecessary risks as they aren't properly trained. And some are going to lift beyond their abilities as they don't want to be seen as weak in front of others. That makes them prone to injury. Obesity, that can increase the strain on the body during lifting and movement tasks. So the extra weight puts additional pressure on joints and the spine, so increasing the likelihood of musculoskeletal injury. So you have to remember, in addition to lifting the load, you're also lifting a proportion of your own body weight. Then we've got the untrained, they're at higher risk. So without knowing how to lift properly or assess a task safely, even a simple movement can lead to long-term harm. So some might have a predisposition to an injury, and that might be due to previous injuries, medical conditions, or congenital issues, making them especially susceptible to strain. Then when we're tired, we're more likely to be injured. So fatigue affects coordination, judgment, and muscle control, and they can turn even routine tasks into dangerous ones. And of course, we've got pregnant women as well, so they require special consideration, and a specific risk assessment needs to be in place. They need to take account, the likes of changes in balance, joint stability, and abdominal pressure, meaning they must avoid tasks that could harm them or the unborn child. So by understanding and accommodating these individual factors, we can reduce the risk level by making sure we have measures in place. Non-occupational groups. So we see here an image of a lady that's sitting at her computer. And we don't need to be experts to see that our position is causing issues with our posture. And that's the reason why we carry out display screen assessments, just to ensure that we're working and sitting comfortably. Because if we're sitting for hours like this, it's not going to do us any good over time. So the prolonged sitting, especially when leaning forward or slouching, that puts additional stress on the tissues that support your spinal column. And that can lead to muscle tension and fatigue, joint strain and disc pressure. But that's another training course on its own. Next we see a picture of a block layer. And they have the highest rate of back injuries with lost work days among construction workers. When you think of it, a block weighs roughly around 23 kg, which is about 3.5 stone. And it's going to weigh more again if it's wet. So try lifting that multiple times a day while on piecework. It's going to have an effect over time. It's the stooped posture that contributes, as not only are you lifting the load because you're stooped, but you're also lifting the load of the upper body in addition to the weight being lifted, and that's causing additional stress on the muscles and ligaments that are attached. And then the last picture that relates to vibration. So if you're working with tools or machines that vibrate for long periods, it can take a toll on your back. So the constant shaking can wear down the discs in your spine and leave your back muscles stiff and sore, and even slow down blood flow, and that makes it harder for the body to recover. So over time, this kind of work can lead to back pain, slip discs, or even nerve trouble. It's something just to watch out for, especially if you're driving heavy machinery or if you're working on platforms that vibrate a lot. So taking breaks, keeping a good posture and using proper seats or supports can make a big difference. We've now come to the end of Module 1, where we looked at the importance of manual handling. And as I said at the start of the course, it ultimately comes down to you to make the right decisions and not gamble with your health. Just think about the task before you do it. Do a risk assessment by using the mnemonic TILE, task, individual, load and environment. We discussed the various manual handling injuries that can occur. No one is exempt from the risk of injury, and if it happens, it can result in pain and suffering such as hernias, slip discs, etc. And as we mentioned, we want to avoid that at all costs. Then we look at the traumatic effects, cumulative effects over time, and degeneration, plus the vulnerable groups and known occupational groups and the effect manual handling has on those. If you'd like to avail of the full course, please drop me an email or message me below. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you found Module 1 beneficial.